Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I was 17 when this happened. I'm now 18, and this was right before my birthday. I was on a lot of apps to help me make friends. I'm autistic and struggle making friends in real life. I'm femme, but trans F to M, still M, and also asexual. Because of the nature of these apps, I stated in my bio that I was asexual. I also mentioned my interests. Then I met this one guy who lived maybe an hour away. I was looking for a friend to smoke with, and he said he would. I know, I was very naive. Nonetheless, we planned a time, and I waited outside for him. He brought me a wine cooler, and we took turns hitting his cart. We had deep, meaningful conversations and immediately clicked, which I thought was amazing, at least until a bit later, when I was very high. I tend to be impulsive and don't know my limits well. It was getting very cold, so I told him I should get back inside. He agreed and started walking me toward my window. I was stumbling, unable to see straight. Once we were in my driveway, he asked for a hug before leaving. Thinking it was kind of cute, I gave him that hug. But the next thing I knew, he was behind me with a knife to my neck. At first, I tried to fight back, but I quickly realized it was getting me nowhere and only causing more harm. In that terrifying moment, I thought I was going to become just another true crime murder victim. So I stopped fighting and started listening to him, hoping he'd spare my life. At the same time, I tried to leave as much evidence as possible, in case listening didn't save me. Then I noticed scars on his thighs. Somehow, I managed to appeal to some part of his humanity. My exact words were, "I see your scars. You're just like me. You're hurting. But this isn't going to stop the hurt. It'll only soothe it temporarily." I don't know how I was able to think so logically in such a panicked state, but it ended up saving my life. He let me go, but only after I agreed to meet him again. I agreed just to get out of the situation, then went inside and tended to my cut thumb. After that, I blocked him on everything but kept his messages on my phone in case I ever found the courage to go to the police. Of course, I never met up with him again and never will. What scares me the most is how much we had in common, our mentality and personality. I know predators like him often say things they don't mean, but our deep conversations had felt so real. This happened shortly before weed was legalized in Germany. In Berlin, regulations were already fairly relaxed, and as long as you didn't explicitly bother anyone, you usually wouldn't get arrested for smoking in public. I've been smoking daily for years. I know it's not great, but that's beside the point. I can function pretty well while stoned. However, I almost never smoked in public, partly to avoid trouble, but mostly because I prefer the comfort of my own home. One late night around 3 a.m., I was chilling online with friends, ready to call it a day. I wanted to unwind with a joint and one of my favorite shows, but I had no snacks left. Determined to end the night properly, I decided to head to a nearby Spatty, a small convenience store similar to a 7-Eleven. At that hour, only the sketchiest ones were still open, often operating illegally. I grabbed my coat and keys, but hesitated before leaving. Why not make this cold walk a little more enjoyable? I thought, rolling a small joint. I lit it as I stepped outside, braving the freezing breeze. The area I live in is pretty rough, mostly foreign residents, many from Arabic countries. Poor integration has led to high crime and violence, but I was in good spirits as I strolled toward the flickering neon sign of the Spatty. Just one more intersection across, a group of men stood at the corner. They looked Middle Eastern, a bit older than me, and watched as I walked by. It felt normal, nothing unusual. I crossed the street, already a little high, without giving them much thought. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Routine ID check. Please show me your identification." My heart sank. Of course, this had to happen the one time I smoked in public, I thought, turning to face the police, but they weren't police. It was the group from the intersection, now slowly approaching me. Routine ID check. Please show me your ID. We're undercover cops, one of them said, with a very smug grin. I froze. It was clear they weren't cops. None of them showed identification, and their demeanor gave them away. You know smoking weed is illegal, don't you? The man continued, his pupils enormous. It was obvious they had no authority whatsoever, and they began circling me. Show us what's in your pockets, the leader demanded. So it's a robbery, I thought. If I don't resist, maybe I'll only lose my phone, the few bills I'd brought for snacks. Then a wave of dread hit me. My weekly tips, about €300 in cash, were also in my pocket. I'd forgotten to deposit it earlier, and losing that money would wreck my budget for the month. What now? As I slowly reached into my pocket, the leader pressed me. What's taking so long? I pulled out an old pack of gum and some broken headphones, hoping to satisfy them. Where's your wallet? I need your ID, he insisted. Still fumbling, too stubborn and too stupid to hand over my tips, I inadvertently noticed something that shocked me, the glint of a Glock tucked in his belt. Knives and metal rods are typical weapons around here, but a gun? That was insane, even by local standards. German gun laws are incredibly strict. My adrenaline spiked. Slowly, I pulled out the €5 bill I'd planned to use for snacks, trying to keep my expression neutral. You got no wallet? He growled, his face darkening. My brain screamed at me to do something, anything, before this escalated further. Then a desperate thought flashed through my mind. The Arabs in this area were known to fear Russians due to frequent clashes between the two groups. Maybe, just maybe, I could use this to my advantage. In a very heavy Russian accent, I stammered, my friends and my wallet, the coming soon. We'll meet here. To my surprise, their poor English comprehension worked in my favor. They exchanged glances, muttered in German, and decided to wait. I forced myself to look confused, keeping up the bluff. They worked through their effort to figure me out, but it seemed like too much trouble. The leader finally pointed at the €5 bill. All right then, you get us something to drink. Reluctantly, I followed them into the spatty. They grabbed a 6-pack of Coke, and I paid. My heart was pounding. I was sure this wasn't over, that they'd search me or retaliate when my non-existent friends didn't show up. But then, just like that, they left. No violence. No further questions. Nothing. I stood there in shock, unable to process what had just happened. Now, looking back, I can't believe I bluffed my way out of such a dangerous situation. It could have been my last day on Earth, all for €300. I've learned my lesson, and these days, I avoid walking around late at night when the streets are empty. I'm not proud of any of this. I have a big family, and we're super close. When I was in high school, my aunt was dating this guy who seemed really wealthy, but no one really knew what he did. I think anyone could have guessed, though. I asked my aunt to introduce me to her boyfriend, and we talked about how I could work for him. Without going into too much detail, he agreed to let me work for him, and I started selling to people I knew. I went to high school in an area where drugs were pretty common. I knew a few boys who claimed they were already using this stuff, so I offered to sell it to them, and surprisingly, they placed really big orders. I didn't ask questions. I just sort of went along with it. I was making about $3,000 a month from this, not enough to retire or anything, but definitely more than most 17-year-olds made. I never made a point to flaunt my money or anything. I thought I kept it well hidden, or at least I hoped I did. What bothers me is that there's no way of really knowing. One Saturday morning, I walked over to my friend's house for a birthday party. It wasn't a wild one or anything, just a cute little breakfast. On my way home, a guy I'd never seen before pulled over and got out of his car. He was well-dressed and a bit older. When he stepped out, I thought he was a cop. He was kind of acting like one, and I was ready to surrender because I didn't think I could actually make an escape. But then he pulled out a switchblade and told me to give him my purse. He said something like, "Don't act dumb, girl. I know you have money. It's okay, we can make this easy if you just give me your purse." I can't really explain why, but that felt like such a cop-like thing to say. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that, I hope you haven't, but you kind of just freeze when someone surprises you like that. It's not exactly fear. Your body just doesn't know how to react. I almost think my body didn't let me get too scared, because if it had, I might have had a heart attack. It was like my body was saying, wait until it's safe, then panic. First, I felt relieved that he wasn't actually a cop, thank goodness for that. Second, when he said it was okay and that we could make it easy, it actually did calm me down a bit. So I managed to say, "Okay, can I just give you my cash? My purse has my phone and pictures and other stuff." And he said, okay to that. I opened my purse and took out all the cash, about $200. He watched me closely as I did it. He took the money and said something like, "If you tell anyone, I will find out." Then he left. And surprisingly, I felt calm for the rest of the walk home. The next morning, it hit me, I had been mugged. That's when the panic set in. I started shaking and crying. Even as I'm writing this now, it gives me chills. I'd never seen that guy before, and when he said, "I know you have money," I don't know if he meant that he knew about my dealing or if he was just trying to scare me. Honestly, I'm really glad it happened. It made me get out of that business at exactly the right time. Things were only going to get more dangerous from there. It's still scary thinking about it, but that guy saved me without even realizing it. I told my aunt's boyfriend what happened and that it was too scary to keep doing this. He told me to send all my customers to him instead. So I did, and that was the end of it for me. It's been almost 10 years now, and I haven't looked back since. My name is Jules, and this story took place in 2022. At the time, I was a business school student, but my English skills needed improvement. To address this, I decided to take a gap year and move to Toronto, Canada, for intensive language courses. Since the costs were high, I found a shared apartment with other students. The apartment had 3 bedrooms, one of which was still vacant, waiting for a new tenant. My roommate, Sandro, was Swiss German, tall, almost 2 meters, and weighing 120 kilos, but incredibly friendly. We quickly became friends. A few weeks later, Sandro mentioned that he was going on a week-long road trip through Canada's national parks. We planned to leave early on a Saturday morning. While I had been informed that the new student would arrive that same day around 3 p.m., Sandro left the apartment at 10 a.m., leaving me alone to await the newcomer. Hours passed, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., still no one. I grabbed something to eat, watched a show on Netflix, and eventually decided to call it a night. Around midnight, I was startled awake by knocks on the apartment door. I heard someone entering. That must be the new student, I thought groggily as an unfamiliar voice explained the apartment's layout. Too tired to investigate, I stayed in bed and drifted back to sleep. A few minutes later, there were knocks on my bedroom door, once, then again about 10 minutes later. Thinking there might be a problem, I reluctantly got up. Standing in the doorway was a young Japanese woman, around 25 years old. I quickly explained a few details about the apartment, we exchanged Instagram handles, and then retreated to our respective rooms for the night. Over the following days, she frequently asked me to accompany her on bus or subway rides. I happily helped, showing her stops and landmarks before returning to my usual routine of classes and gym sessions. But gradually, her behavior became unsettling. Every evening when I came home, she would either message me or find reasons to talk. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. One evening, while lying on my bed, I noticed her standing on the shared balcony outside my window. She was leaning against the railing, staring at me with a very piercing gaze. When she realized I had noticed, she quickly turned and went back into her room. Uneasy, I tried to brush it off as a coincidence. Later that night, just as I was falling asleep, I glanced out the window again. She was still there, watching me. Our eyes met briefly before she vanished. This pattern continued for several nights. Each evening I would catch her on the balcony, staring intently at me, and each time she would disappear as soon as she realized I'd seen her. Then, the night before my departure, things escalated. I had to wake up early for an appointment and left my room at 5:30 a.m. The apartment was silent and dark, except for the faint glow from under the bathroom door. As I brushed my teeth, I heard soft footsteps behind me. She emerged from her room, moving silently across the wooden floor. Instead of turning back, she opened the bathroom door and stepped inside. Sitting on the closed toilet, she stared at me, motionless, her expression blank. The moment stretched into an oppressive silence. Finally, I mustered the courage to leave the bathroom, closing the door behind me. I returned to my room, unsettled and unsure of her intentions. That night, as I was having dinner in my room, I saw her through the window again, staring inside. I looked away, hoping she would leave. Later, at 3 a.m., I woke abruptly from a nightmare. Turning my head, I saw her still on the balcony. Her wide eyes were fixed on me, and this time she didn't vanish. She remained there, motionless like a statue, before suddenly turning and running inside. My heart raced as I rushed to lock my door. Moments later, I heard her trying the handle, gently at first, then more forcefully. Holding my breath, I stayed silent until everything went still. By morning, I was ready to leave for France. She was gone, and I never saw her again. To this day, I'm not sure what her intentions were. Perhaps she was just fascinated by me. My build is far from typical for a Japanese person. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.